This is Queer Young Thing. Welcome to another episode of Queer Young Thing. My name's Dylan Adler, and tonight we are talking about depression and things that may make us a little bit mentally unsound. I've got a fantastic panel with me on tonight's episode. I have Emily, Carly, James, and Arjun. Now, we are talking about depression, but I'd just like to know, what are some things that, I guess, have caused you a bit of depression or caused you a bit of strife mentally throughout your lives? Why don't we start with yourself, Carly?
For me, it was, I guess, coming from a rural town and identifying as same-sex attracted, not quite understanding what that meant and how people would treat me for it. So moving away from there for university, that was a big step for me because I got to, I guess, kind of express myself and feel like people weren't just going to immediately judge me for it. But yeah, it was really hard coming to terms with that and feeling like people were going to, I guess, disown me if they found out who I was. And it was that constant anxiety and fear associated with that until I finally started coming out and realised, hey, it's okay. But it was a long, hard battle for me.
How long was that journey for yourself?
Probably third year, I finally came out and was confident and things started getting better. Last year, I had a year off uni and going back home, and it was like the difference between in year 12, I wasn't out, so people didn't know, but it was just my own internal battle. But last year, I was out and back in a country town, so it was a completely different dynamic because people knew about me, and it was like, what were they saying behind my back? What did they think of me? Going out, it was like people would look at me and go, oh, that's the gay person in town, like we know her. And I remember going down the street once and I just went into a clothing store and this teenager just looked at me, pointed at me, laughed, pointed at a friend and pulled out a phone and took a photo of me, and I was like, why are you doing that? Like, it just seemed so inappropriate, and it was the best thing I could do was get out of that town and get to the city where it was just more acceptable. So,
yeah, that sounds absolutely confounding. Now, Arjun, what about yourself? Has there been, what I guess gets you in a bit of a dark mental state?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. I think, relationships and when they don't work out, that's a point that all of us have come across, or, that you experience not just once perhaps, but more than once. Mm-hmm. Any person experiences that a number of times, I suppose.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah, that disappointment and that sense of isolation as well at the end of a relationship, and it's not depression, but it's a sense of loss, plus it's a sense of dejection almost.
Yeah.
But you get over it, and of course, life goes on.
How do you deal with feeling depressed or sad?
I try to talk to someone about it, to be honest. If I'm just by myself, it just makes me more sad.
I just make sure I'm busy doing a lot of things.
Look, I think connection's really important.
Usually try to connect with people.
Talk to someone who you trust or feel comfortable with.
Or sometimes I hide away.
Try and think of all the positives and talk to someone.
James, you've got quite an interesting story and a unique journey that you've gone through in your adult life.
Okay.
Now, as not conforming to a binary gender role, how has that been for yourself?
Difficult. I've as you often hear from a young age, had a sense that these gender roles were somewhat suspicious, or didn't entirely make sense. But it's only really in the last probably 3 years that I've become aware that there are other people that have that sense as well, and so it's been interesting to be able to explore that with other people, especially on the uni campus with the queer chatters and that sort of thing has been really useful and helpful.
Absolutely.
For exploring those ideas a bit more. So I suppose not as extreme as Carly, but a similar kind of experience for me, watered down. I grew up in a semi-rural area, and just that sense that there's not even any point indulging this side of me because it would sort of feels too dangerous to, like, not conceptually dangerous, but actually potentially physically dangerous.
And that would, like, do you think any phobias were internalised as well? Did you experience that? Because I know a lot of people in the trans and the same-sex attracted community, they experience internalised homophobia and transphobia. Did you ever go through any shades of internalised transphobia?
I think that we all do that to some degree. I'm not sure if we ever get entirely free of it either.
No, absolutely not.
So yes is the short answer there.
Yeah. And Emily, I actually couldn't imagine you being quite in a depressed mindset. You've got quite a lovely smile, which I guess is a major misconception about depression. So would you care to share any depression stories?
I'm actually diagnosed with depression and I'm on medication for it. So
really?
Yeah, that's been a bit of a journey. And one thing that really gets me lately, being a baby gay, so someone who's just newly come out as homosexual, I've had this idea all my life that I've wanted to have like a wedding, you know, and marry a man and have, you know, a family and children. And coming to realise that, you know, I'm gay, it feels like I know that that's, you know, still a possibility and I can still have that, but it feels like, you know, it's not what I've come to expect that I've wanted, and that's something that I'm still actually struggling with, just, you know, dealing with not being able to have exactly what I have wanted.
Yeah, and trying to go from there, and where do I exactly plot myself from this place?
How do you deal with feeling depressed or sad?
I usually try and talk to friends.
Hang out with my friends, hanging out with like friends, just do things that make me happy. Anything just to get me out of the state.
I just deal with it, like I just hang out with people.
What misconceptions would really fire you up about depression?
Assuming that you could just get over it is a big thing. Like, you try and talk to people about it and some people just don't have the time to listen. And they're like, oh yeah, you're just sad, just go watch a movie or something like that, you'll be fine, just cry it out or whatever. That annoys me because it's just not something you can switch off, because one day you're happy, the next just nothing makes you smile. Like, people are going out having fun and you just want to stay in bed. You know, it just gets hard, and it's a long process that you can't just switch it off.
And what are some coping mechanisms that I guess our panel have used to get over a depressive time or a depressive moment? But for me, and it may be not, I guess I love running and exercising and exerting myself, but I think that's just so I get to myself to the point of just exhaustion, and then I pass out and then go off and do it again the next day. Like, does anyone go through the same kind of emotions?
I think sleep does help, because it gives you, like, especially if it's like right in the moment you're depressed, sometimes sleep can help, just so then you wake up refreshed and you can look at it with a clear mind and go, okay, how, you know, if it is an issue or something, you know, how you can deal with it. I also find talking to people helps. And even if it's not, if you're just feeling sad for no reason, talking can really, you know, help just about what you're feeling and,
getting it all out there.
Yeah, just getting it out.
Well, I think that we've got a whole heap more of this topic left to go. You're watching Queer Young Thing. Hey, welcome back to Queer Young Thing. Tonight we are talking about depression. If you'd like to share your story, you can hit us up with the QYT hashtag. It's time to introduce our fantastic and esteemed guests. We've got on our panel of elders, Nate from the Gay and Lesbian Switchboard. We've also got Sandra from Headspace. Now, looking at the previous discussion that we had, we were talking about our own journeys throughout depression. What do you notice, I guess, James, what do you notice first when you're going through like your symptoms, or are there any triggers for you that will get you into a state of depression?
I think there's many triggers. There's not necessarily any particular ones, but yeah, there's usually this sense of I've hit a downhill slope and I'm heading a bad place. Certainly, I haven't been able to really articulate them specifically, other than lots of sleepiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, that's probably a good sign that I'm heading into a rather difficult time.
Okay, and Carly, have you ever experienced depression? Have there been certain symptoms or triggers that have that have gotten you into that state of mind?
When I get stressed, like I'm in a very good place now. I'm currently seeing someone, so I'm really happy. Things are looking a lot better. I'm out. But a trigger for me is when I get stressed with exams. I noticed my first semester of vet exams, coming into that, freaking out, thinking I wasn't good enough, all that, and it just kind of set me on a bit of a spiral. But generally, yeah, I'm pretty good now, but it's just those little things. Stress is the biggest trigger for me, I think.
Now, Nate, being a part of the Gay and Lesbian Switchboard, and we've talked about this in other episodes as well, there'd be quite confronting calls. Do you ever get, I guess, depressed from being in that environment, from having to, hearing these people share their stories? How do you, I guess, manage to stay on top with that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be quite confronting, and it can you can sometimes get to the end of a call and go, wow, that, and it's sort of that you can hear, when you hear someone's voice and you hear how they're going and they're struggling, you can't help but feel a little bit of that and sort of get to the end and go, oh wow. I mean, we have a very structured approach at Switchboard in terms of counsellor care, and we've got people that you can call and have a chat if it's a difficult time. But it's essentially just trying to distance yourself a little bit, but you're going to remember some things. And
absolutely. And I guess the same question to yourself, Sandra, because you being part of Headspace and working especially with children, how do you would come across some not the greatest situations in a family life?
Sure. I guess if people come to Headspace, usually something's not right, whether it's the young person or the family. But the focus for us is trying to think about how can we help. So that's always our idea. How do we understand what's going on? What can we do to make it better? So despite the fact that sometimes you're hearing some things, as Nate was saying, that are pretty overwhelming and things that you think, no, this shouldn't be happening for young people.
How do you deal with feeling depressed or sad?
Dance.
If I feel depressed, I look around. I love to go into nature and see, something like animals.
Exercise.
Music and exercise.
Yeah, exercise.
Something that I can be proud of, or something I can actually be proud of, and actually do an achievement or do something, to make myself feel happy about myself.
And one particular issue for our community, the GLBTI community, is when we internalise internalise homophobia, internalise transphobia. Mm-hmm. There was a study done in New York where a filmmaker, he interviewed 4 of his gay friends and 4 other gay men, and the major thing they all had in common was that they hated, not disliked, but hated other gay men. God. And the outcome of this film was that it was internalised homophobia. What they were seeing in other gay men was in fact an aspect or a part of themselves that they didn't want to outwardly reflect. Now, if someone were to go to, I guess, Headspace or the LGBT Switchboard, and they were saying, look, they've got a point of contention, they hate their gender identity or their sexual identity or the person that they are in general, what kind of layers of support would be there for them to, I guess, start maybe getting treatment for depression?
At Headspace, we can do that in a number of ways. Some young people like to come online to the e-Headspace sites, so you can be completely anonymous. Sometimes some people prefer the phone, or you can go to a centre, a Headspace centre. What would we be trying to do? We'd be trying to understand that young person and their perspective and what's going on in their world. Because often if people have that, as you say, internalised homophobia, or well, what's the messages? What's happened to them earlier on? What's been their experience with regards to bullying or abuse or just rejection? What's been the messages from their family and more broadly the community? And trying to help think about those things with them. And if indeed that leads to, or that's been a precipitant for depression, then it's what do we need to do about the depression? And that might be, first of all, coming and talking to someone. We really can't underestimate the importance of talking to someone, letting somebody know what's going on, rather than just carrying it by yourself. things get bigger and bigger if it's just going around in your head.
Yes,
we all
they
know
do.
that. So that's the first step, and then it's trying to work out, well, what are the stresses? You know, people already mentioned that sometimes there are stresses to do with all sorts of things, home, school, relationship. What do you need to do about those things?
Now, Emily, you have said in an earlier segment that you experience depression. You currently take medications for your depression. Would you? How did you actually get to that point of going onto medication? Was it initiated from your family?
No, actually, my family were very much against the medication thing. I actually, in the end, had to go and just seek it myself. I'd been seeing a therapist for up to a year, and which had been working, but then I got into VCE in Year 12, and that was when I realised I needed a bit more help than just talking to someone. So I actually actively went out and sought that myself from my GP. My parents do know that I take the medication now, and whilst they weren't on board to begin with, they've come to accept that that's something that I do need, which is good.
Yeah, look, we've got more on this topic coming up right after the break. Make sure you hit us up with the QYT hashtag online. We'll be back in a tick. Welcome back to Queer Young Thing. My name is Dylan Adler, and tonight's episode we are talking about depression. Depression specifically within the LGBTI youth community. Now, just before the break, we were talking about our own experiences and our own treatments and for depression. Now, Arjun, you mentioned just in the green room that you had something you'd like to raise.
Oh yeah. For me, when I feel depressed or when I feel anxious about certain things, and especially if those things are ideas or thoughts and feelings that I'm experiencing, what I do is because I want to deal with them, confront them, I write them down, and I find that if I express them in writing, things just become much easier because I've put them out there and I don't have to carry them per se within me. As much as I needed to before that. So writing it down is my it's a step that I take. Yeah.
I used to not challenge anybody else's opinion. I'd kind of be the person in the group that would just be like, oh, okay, that's your opinion, that's great. This is my opinion, but you don't like it, so I'm not going to say anything. And I remember when I was in years, I think it was 9 and 10, and there was probably almost 9 or 10 of us that were in the group together, and this big fight happened, and I didn't have any friends for a month. I got very dark. I would write in my diary, and the girls actually broke into my locker and stole my diary and read it and passed it around to a lot of people, and that really was very heartbreaking. And somebody actually hacked my email. Having people read and know what was inside my head wasn't exactly what I needed at that time.
When I was struggling a lot while at university, the first step for me, I guess, was coming out to one of my first friends and talking to them about how I was feeling, because they knew I wasn't okay, but I hadn't expressed it properly. And for me, being able to tell them, okay, this is who I am, and then being able to relate that to how I was feeling, that was really good. And it was kind of like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. And then the more people I talked to, the easier it got. And those friends are the people who said to me, you need to go see a counsellor. So that's what got me into the counselling service at La Trobe. And funnily enough, I sat down with the first session, my friend came with me for support, which was really good, and I just blurted out everything to Devorah. I told her everything, and then she turns around and says, oh, well, actually, I'm a lesbian myself, and it was well, that's the best coincidence ever, amazing. So, but from there, it was great. She got me into queer chat, and just talking to people in the same situation as me, and being able to relate to someone, that was really, really good, and what helped me build my confidence, and in the end, get me out of that stage in my life, so really helpful support.
Sensational. Well, for myself, I think for me, it's just exerting that energy. Also, blowing away people in video games, that seems to be the greatest way. I mean, I think we've all had a job where we didn't really go anywhere, but then you pop in a new game and you're like, well, now I'm a space fighter. I'm going to fight some space. And that does help for me to combat my own depression and anxiety issues.
I'm glad that I never acted on any of the thoughts that I had within my head to want to run away or to change my life or to do anything drastic. But I think knowing that I had my family support at the end of the day was what kept me going, because I've never, like, I cut myself on one occasion, and I was really very depressed at that stage. I got a knife and I just did it. And I just sat there and I did it for like a half an hour, and then I looked at it and I fell asleep because I was so upset. I was so emotionally overwhelmed that I just kind of got to that point where I did it, and then I was just like, okay, I'm going to sleep now. And I went to sleep, and I remember waking up a few hours later and looking at my arm and thinking, holy fuck, like, what did I do to myself? And did I really get to that point where I couldn't take it anymore?
Now, let's know for our panel of experts, what do you guys do? Because I could imagine that you would experience depression, you know, it doesn't discriminate. What do you do?
Am I going to
go
for it?
first.
Okay. I like going down to the beach, and getting in the surf, and when you're trying to, you know, get a wave on a boogie board, you can't actually think of anything else. And then the fun of that. And I think this is where, I think for other people, exercise and doing something that you enjoy is really important, and that works for me.
I like the blowing up things, and you know, that's awesome. Killing other people, although not people, like, you know, on the games. Although sometimes it does sort of work in reverse when, like, you're playing online against a 12-year-old who beats you. It does make you feel a bit sad. But, no, games, catching up with friends, coffee, comic books, you know, just whatever.
Yeah. The idea of an alternate reality, not just video games, but for me, like reading and getting into an alternate universe is really helpful. I find that's where I really got into reading, because I'm like a really big reader, and I'm a really big fan of Harry Potter, and I actually have a tattoo for it, and it's representative. It's a quote from it, but it's also representative of Harry Potter, that series, having always been there for me when I've been going through a tough time. I can then just turn to that and open it, and that can be really helpful.
When I think about that now, cutting myself didn't make any pain go away. It just it created a different pain that stopped the pain that I felt emotionally, created a physical pain, but at the same time, until I learnt to heal the mental and emotional pain within myself, the physical pain then stopped.
There's certain issues within depression that coping mechanisms that some people go down. When I was younger, and it's something that happens to quite a lot of youths, self-harm comes into this. Now, how easy is it for a family to approach Headspace, or how difficult is it for them to then start that discussion and start saying, well, we have somebody in our family or someone in our life who is self-harming?
Yeah. I think that's the whole self-harm thing has been something that has often been really hidden. You know, young people don't want to let anybody know that that's happening. Families aren't sure what to do, not sure if they should mention it or not.
It's quite confronting.
Yeah. So we would be encouraging people to come and talk to us. People can do it anonymously, so they can come online, or they can pick up the phone, or they can go to a centre and tell us, you know, what is it that you're worried about, your young person, if it's a family member, or for young people themselves, to try and... What's scary is that people equate self-harm with suicide. They make that kind of automatic connection.
Yeah.
And in fact, self-harm serves lots of different functions for people, as you rightly said. For some people, it's a way of trying to cope with a whole lot of distress and feeling overwhelmed with what's going on in your life, and it has nothing to do with suicide. You know, a young person's intention is not to end their life. But that's where families often go, oh my goodness, and are really shocked and really frightened. And so come and talk to us if you're not sure.
And if you are experiencing depression, you can definitely hit up the Gay and Lesbian Switchboard, Headspace, and also Lifeline. But tonight we are out of time, but we'll be back next week. You're watching Queer Young Thing.